clicked on this video because you wanted to know how medical devices are regulated. Well, let us tell you. A medical device is an instrument, apparatus, machine, implant, or even software intended by the manufacturer to be used for a medical purpose, whether it's to diagnose, treat, assist, or monitor illness. You may or may not know, but you would most likely have used one day to day. From condoms to blood pressure monitors and syringes to a simple wheelchair, these are all medical devices. As you may know, or at least as you would hope, medical devices face extremely stringent regulations in order to be released to the market. The journey and work doesn't even just stop there, because medical devices are continually monitored, even after they are released to market, and this is known as post-market surveillance, or post-market clinical evaluation. Anyhow, with that being said, how are medical devices regulated in the first place? Well, medical devices are regulated by different authorities depending on the country the company is trying to sell to. For this video, we are going to focus on America, Canada, and the EU, which includes the UK as far as the United Kingdom is concerned. If a medical device meets the regulations for these regions, this is usually more than enough to be qualified in most places around the world. Let's start with the EU. Currently, in relation to the medical device field, the EU are undergoing a massive change to its medical device regulations. Let's talk about what's currently in place though, before we go on to what this big change is all about. Currently, in order to sell to the EU, medical devices have to have a CE mark, which stands for Conformité Européenne. I think it is French, but don't quote me on it. The CE mark has been mandated by a couple of pieces of legislation called directives. To satisfy the requirements of the directives, companies use a standard called ISO 13485 as a guide. ISO 13485 is a standard that is aligned to the European directives, but is used worldwide for the manufacturing of medical devices. This standard applies to a Quality Management System, or QMS for short, which is a set of procedures and documents, kind of like a recipe, that every manufacturer needs to have, so their processes from customer service to any production processes are the same and reliable each time. By fulfilling the requirements of ISO 13485, a company needs to have the appropriate documentation, then successfully implement it in practice. Once a manufacturer can show that they conform to the requirements, they get an organization called a notified body to come, audit them, as in make an assessment, then they will be issued with a certificate. Now, the company can legally put CE markings on their products and sell them, since these are now in conformance with the standard, or more importantly, the MDD, which is the Medical Devices Directive, which is what's in place at the moment. As mentioned earlier, there is an important change, which is that the MDD is now under a transition period to the MDR, which is the Medical Devices Regulation. And this will take full effect in 2024. The MDR is similar, but has even more stringent conditions attached. Once all this has been completed, a company can sell that particular device to the European market. So, with that overview of the European regulations, let's turn to the United States. The United States is slightly simpler, you could say, but at the end of the day, it's another set of regulations that need to be met. The FDA, or Food and Drug Administration in the United States, is the overarching authority that approves and assesses all medical devices being sold in the US market. There are several steps to getting a device approved. The first step is registration with the FDA, or the Food and Drug Administration. Next, they need to obtain a 510K, or it's also called a pre-market notification clearance. Third, they need pre-market approval from the FDA, which is a scientific review process specific to the FDA. Then, after pre-market approval, the applicant or company can now market their devices in the US. That's a lot. Anyway, to go with pre-market approval, a company can provide clinical data in advance to streamline the process and make it easier for the FDA. This is called investigational device exemption. The requirements of data collection are discussed and approved by the FDA, And then another requirement that also goes hand in hand with the pre-market approval is fulfillment of the Quality System Regulation. If a company has a robust quality management system, or QMS, similar or identical to the ISO 13485 mentioned earlier, then this should be sufficient. Last but not least, the company must have procedures for reporting of adverse events such as an injury or death, and this will fulfill the final part of approval, which is the Medical Device Reporting Regulation. Once a company jumps through all these hurdles, then they can sell to the US under the watchful eye of the FDA. Currently, there are talks to consider more integration with ISO 13485 as it's used worldwide, to make it easier and to make the approval process more streamlined. The final country we will talk about is Canada. Canada is pretty simple as it recognizes ISO 13485 already. To get approval in Canada, companies just have to adapt their ISO 13485 quality management system to also meet requirements of the CMDR, which is the Canadian Medical Device Regulation specific to Canada. This is under a system called MDSAP, or Medical Device Single Audit Program. The purpose of this program is to streamline the approval processes as it recognizes ISO 13485, and it makes it easier for companies to be approved in Canada as long as they meet the ISO 13485 requirements. Once this is done, companies will need a medical device license or then get approved with Health Canada. If this is all good, then companies can then sell their products in Canada. Finally, to wrap up, ISO 13485 is a standard that companies looking to sell in Europe, America, or Canada should adhere to. With that done, then there are just small additions to tweak it for either Canada or America, as they have their own regulations and their own additions and requirements on top of 13485. To recap, 13485, ISO 13485, is a document that acts as a guidance for the creation and implementation of procedures that define how a product is designed, manufactured, and then monitored after, including customer feedback, production, and purchasing. Medical device regulations can be very complicated, and that's the way it should be, because these can be a high risk to human lives. A very detailed standard is used, and devices are monitored even after they are released to the market. Safety is the top priority, and these standards are constantly being improved and revised. I hope this video has provided a greater understanding of how medical devices are regulated in Western countries, and make sure to like and subscribe for informative videos on all kinds of subjects. Catch you next time, and live an informed life.